Hello students, welcome once again. We are doing Ode to the West Wind by P.B. Shelley, and today we will do the second canto. I just want to give you a short brief recap of the previous canto. That is, the west wind. In the first stanza, the west wind, the power of the west wind is described by the poet, and he says that west wind is not a very peaceful or pleasant wind, but it is the breath of autumn's being. And as we know, autumn is a transitional season. When summer's abundance begins to fade, the west wind strips the leaves from the trees, whips up the sky, and causes huge storms in the ocean. So here he says that west wind drives away the leaves, and it works as a destroyer and the preserver, because we know that in order to have beautiful renewal and rebirth, which spring promises, one needs the powerful and destructive force of the west wind. First, when there is a destruction, there is clearance, and then after the clearance, there will be rebirth. So now, in the first stanza, as we know that we have seen the impact of the west wind on land. Now in the second stanza, we will see the impact of the west wind on the sky. Now first let me read the second stanza. Thou on whose stream, mid the steep sky's commotion, loose clouds like earth's decaying leaves are shed, shook from the tangled bows of heaven and ocean, angels of rain and lightning, there are spread on the blue surface of thine airy surge, like the bright air uplifted from the head of some fierce Maenad, even from the dim verge of the horizon to the zenith's height, the locks of the approaching storm. Thou dirge of the dying year, to which this closing night will be the dome of the vast sepulchre, vaulted with all thy congregated might of vapors, from whose solid atmosphere black rain and fire and hail will burst o'er. So in this second section of the poem, the clouds, they look like the bright hair uplifted from the head of some fierce Maenad. Now here in this stanza, the effect of the west wind on sky, we can see that here, that the clouds, they look like the bright hair uplifted from the head of some fierce Maenad. Now, who is a Maenad? In Greek mythology, the Maenades were the female followers of Dionysus, the god of wine. यानी शराब के जो देवता हैं, उनकी ये followers हैं. They were famous for their wild parties and dancing, and are often portrayed with their hair uplifted or very wild. The west wind makes the clouds wild and drunk. It creates chaos. Unlike a sister of the spring, which spreads sweet smells and beautiful flowers, the speaker associates west wind with the chaos and death. So he says that thou on whose stream, mid the steep sky's commotion, loose clouds like earth's decaying leaves are shed. Now, here there's a simile. Now, you have to imagine, it is a very complex simile actually. You have to imagine that there is a huge tree which has roots in the ground and then its leaves in the sky. And these leaves are the clouds. And when you shake that tree, the leaves fall off. Similarly, this west wind, it flies the skies to the utmost limit. It says, thou on whose stream, mid the steep skies commotion, there is a lot of commotion or activity. Here there is a spiritual parallel to the tangled bows of heaven and ocean. The bows have been tangled, means बाल जैसे उलझ जाते हैं. ये पेड़ की जो टहनियाँ हैं वो उलझ गई हैं. These are the bows. The boughs of the trees have been entangled. Now you have to imagine such a huge tree that the roots are in the ocean and the leaves and the branches are in the heaven. So it says that when this west wind, it shakes it. So this wind, it is a kind of association of the wind as anger of rain and lightning. It seems very ambiguous and even ominous. Ominous means it is not a very good sign. So this is a bad sign. Omen is a bad sign. So he says that these clouds, they do not bring happiness or they do not bring pleasure or pleasant atmosphere. It is something ominous. You do not like that presence. So he says, angels of rain and lightning, there are spread on the blue surface of thine airy surge. And he says, now there are angels of rain and lightning. Now when there are clouds, and these clouds will break into rain. And then there is also lightning. You know lightning, bijli kadakna. So when there are clouds, then there is rain, of course, and also lightning. There are spread on the blue surface of thine airy surge. Like all these clouds are spread in the sky, in the blue sky. And when the clouds are spread in the blue sky, they show or they give the impression then it is that the whole sky is covered and it is dark. It becomes very dark when the sky is covered with clouds. Like the bright hair uplifted from the head of some fierce Maenad. Now, Maenad, as I've told you, Maenades are, in Greek mythology, they are the female followers of Dionysus. Or you can say, in Roman mythology, there is Bacchus, god of wine is Bacchus. So they are the followers of Dionysus or Bacchus. So these are described as fierce Maenades. As you see that first of all they are very huge, they are very ill-kept, they are not very properly dressed, they keep their hair very loose and their hair is open and they give the impression of a very wild look. And especially when they are drunk, then they become more wild. They have wild parties and then they are frenzied. अपन को पता है जब कोई दारू पी लेता है और इस तरह से जब मदमस्त हो जाते हैं तो what is the behavior. So he is describing, it is a very complex simile, and he is describing these clouds as to the locks or the hair of Maenades. He says, even from the dim verge of the horizon to the zenith side. Dim verge होता है बिल्कुल the point where the lowest point. This is the dim verge of the horizon. Horizon is the point where the earth and the sky seem to meet. They do not meet actually, but they seem to meet. And zenith is the highest point in the sky. यानी क्षितिज से लेकर आसमान तक. So it is as if the hair is spread, it is uplifted, the hair is uplifted from the dim verge. Dim is actually dim because it is not very bright, because when the sky is cloudy, it is not very bright. So from the dim verge of the horizon to the zenith's height, the locks of the approaching storm. Now locks are also hair. here you have the locks of this approaching storm. That sometimes we can easily predict that it is going to rain. How can we predict that it is going to rain? Suddenly the clouds gather, and they gather so much that the whole sky becomes dark, and we feel that it is going to rain. And there, if it is a very windy day, then it's going to have a very strong storm. So he says that this actually gives the hint that it is going to rain. These are the locks of the approaching storm. Thou, dirge of the dying year. Now you are the dirge of the dying year. What is the meaning of dirge? Dirge is actually a funeral song, that when they are burying the dead, at that time they sing a song, and that song is known as a dirge. So he said that you are the dirge of the dying year. Now, when do you sing a dirge? When you are burying somebody, when the person is dead. So over here he is actually saying that you are the dirge of the dying year. Now the year is coming to an end. Autumn year is coming to an end. It is also symbolically, if somebody says that I am in the autumn of my life, मैं अपने जीवन के पतझड़ में हूँ, it means that he is becoming old and he is on the verge of death. So he says that on the horizon, you are the dirge of the dying year. Your dirge is a reference to death is to come. So, song played at funeral. Dirge is the song played at funeral. So, of the dying year, dirge of the dying year, to which this closing night will be the dome of a vast sepulchre. So, what happens? That after the death, you bury the dead. So here it seems that you are going to end the year. This is the closing of the year, end of the year, and he says, to which this closing night will be the dome of a vast sepulchre. Now, dome is a structure which is like a hemisphere. I'll give you an example, that when you cut the ball into half, that you have two halves. The inside of the hollow inside of the ball is like a dome shaped. So he says, you are like the dome of the vast sepulchre. Sepulchre is a monument. It's a monument which is erected on the graves. So he says it is a huge sepulchre. It is a huge dome, vaulted with all thy congregated might. That he is saying that this whole earth, if you look at the earth, you can see only the half of it. You can see the upper dome of the earth. And then he says that in this dome, in this vast sepulchre, the vault of this, all thy might, all your power, it has congregated. So here he says that it mirrors the impending doom of the storm approaching. The wind fuels it with congregated might. Congregated might means the power, the collective power of the west wind. It is creating all the clouds to gather together and fall like rain. Now, of vapors from whose solid atmosphere black rain and fire and hail will burst. Oh, hear. Now, this description of black rain, this is a description of toxic black rain and fire and hail will burst, seems very morbid and intense. It does not give a very pleasant picture. It gives because the whole description about the doom, the dirge, all death and decay, the description is all of death and decay. So he says, congregated might, vaulted with all their congregated might of vapors, from whose solid atmosphere black rain and fire and hail will burst. Now here there is vapor and then solid atmosphere. What does solid atmosphere over here explain? We all know the scientific reason of rain, that water evaporates and then vapors gather, and these vapors they get converted into water and they fall down as rain. So he says, of vapors from whose solid atmosphere, now the solid atmosphere is the water or the rain or the hailstorms. Then what will you have in the form of solid atmosphere? That is the black rain and fire. Fire over here is like lightning, and hail will burst. Now when these clouds will gather with all their might, and when west wind forces the clouds, then the clouds will burst into rain and hailstorms or lightning. So here, and again he appeals to him, oh, hear me, hear me. So he's again and again pleading to the west wind, you please listen to me, please listen to me. So this description explains the emotive pleading of oh, hear, which seems more desperate. Now in the first 3 stanzas, he is appealing. He is actually, first of all, he is specifying the particular scene, that is first on the land, then in the sky, and then later on water. So he is trying to explain the power of the west wind on all these things, जैसे पृथ्वी, जल और आकाश, इन तीनों पे क्या असर होता है वेस्ट विंड का. He is trying to explain it in the 3 stanzas. So I hope you have understood this stanza, because he says these clouds, these formation of the clouds will end up in rain, and then this rain might also start the rejuvenation, like when the seeds are sprouted, they are germinated, they also need rain. So it is actually symbolizing that maybe with this water there will be a regeneration. So now you have understood that this is the impact of the west wind on the clouds or in the sky. So in my next session, I will take the canto number 3rd, which is actually in which there is a description of the impact of the west wind on the water, that is on Atlantic Ocean and on the Mediterranean Ocean. Thank you.